Discover the incredible truth behind the hidden heartwarming stories of the world's richest city. Rosa stood outside her tiny apartment, the faint hum of Silicon Valley's tech giants vibrating in the air. Google towers glittered in the distance like a mirage, promising dreams that felt years past her grasp. She tightened her grip on the grocery bags, splashed with the vivid colors of fresh fruits and the duller ones of canned beans. Each step toward home felt weighted, and yet, her 2 children awaited her, innocent to the harshness that reality often presented. Her heart swelled with pride for them. She thought of Maria with her sparkling eyes and the fierce spirit she shared, and little Luis, whose laughter echoed in the hallways, reminding her of brighter days. Rosa had always fought hard, holding down 3 jobs, scraping by with every penny. She embodied resilience with every shift she worked, every meal she cooked in the cramped kitchen. But in her mind, ambition flickered like a distant star, lighting up her darkest moments, and then, out of nowhere, the past came crashing back. Her estranged brother, Miguel, suddenly re-entering her life, a wild storm in his eyes. As a decorated veteran, he wore his wounds like badges of honor, yet those very badges bore the scars of battles he couldn't fight anymore. Their reunion was tense, filled with the unsaid words and aching silence of old grievances, each conversation a minefield, reminding her of why they drifted apart. Could they still bridge the rift that had formed over years of resentment? Each moment felt like a punch to the gut, and the echo of unspoken pain lingered in the air. Just when things seemed to spiral further, a glimmer of hope emerged. Luis, with his charming creativity, had snagged a prize at a local tech competition, his innovative idea making headlines, thrusting their family into a spotlight that felt surreal. The thrill of his success crashed against her worries, and instead of joy, Rosa felt an urgency clawing at her mind. What if she could turn this moment into their ticket out? She envisioned accolades, financial stability, a way to escape the chains of poverty that bound them. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With a fiery determination, Rosa pitched Luis's idea to anyone who'd listen, but time and again, those faces of the elite tech world reflected an indifference that stung. Could this American dream be just that, a dream reserved for those on the right side of the fence? Frustration boiled in her chest. Each rejection chipped away at her resolve and threatened to bury her beneath doubt. But the community around them faced its own crisis. The schools burned, protests sparked, spotlighting the gaping disparities that festered in silence. In that moment of struggle, Rosa's unwavering spirit resonated through the streets, igniting a collective roar of strength and unity. The well-to-do tech elite were suddenly faced with reality, eye to eye with the truth of Rosa's grit. As she stood at the front lines, breathing in the solidarity of voices raised together, the complexities of family roared just as loudly behind her. Would these moments of connection with her community tear apart her already frayed bonds with Miguel? The tricky dance between ambition and family loyalty loomed heavy in the air. Would they crumble, or could they find a way back to each other amid the chaos? The story hung suspended, the future uncertain, begging to be explored further. Rosa looked around at the crowd, a sea of faces mixing hope and anger, a kaleidoscope of stories and struggles. She could feel the pulse of the moment vibrating through the air, an energy she had not felt in years. There was power in unity, and while her own dreams felt distant, the dreams of others wrapped around her like a warm embrace. Together, they were stronger, and this revelation lit a fire within her, but with every cheer, every shared sentiment, her mind wandered back to Miguel. He was her blood, a reminder of where she came from and what she had fought so hard to escape. Yet here he was, standing in the shadows, a specter of their past. Why couldn't he join her in this fight? Rosa's heart thudded painfully as her thoughts spiraled with the weight of their shared history. Could they really work through the old wounds while sharpening new ones? Suddenly, she spotted him marching towards her, his face a mixture of determination and uncertainty. The noise of the crowd faded as he broke through. "Rosa!" His voice rang out above the din. She felt a jolt of fear mixed with anticipation. Would this be another angsty confrontation, or could he finally understand? "What are you doing here?" Rosa managed, her voice catching in her throat. The tension between them was palpable, a taut string waiting to snap. "I had to see," he breathed, stepping closer. "I didn't know it would mean so much to you and to everyone." Rosa studied him, searching for the brother she used to know beneath the layers of hurt. "You have to be part of this, Miguel. We're stronger together. Not just you and me, but our community too." He looked around, and she could see the doubt flicker across his face. "I'm not sure if I can stand up there," he hesitated. "I don't belong among them." A voice from the crowd pierced the air. "This isn't over yet. Fight for our children." The words echoed with a passion that ignited Rosa's resolve. "Miguel. This is the moment." She took a deep breath, channeling the strength of the collective energy. "You were a soldier, you fought battles for others. This is another fight for your family. For our family." His eyes hardened with emotions too complex to unravel. "What if I fail? What if I mess things up? What if you soar?" She countered, a smile creeping onto her face. "What if we both do?" As she reached out her hand, time seemed to freeze. Would he take it? Moments like this were pivotal, they could lead them closer or push them further apart. The crowd around them swelled with energy and unstoppable force, waiting for something to happen. Before Miguel could respond, a chant erupted nearby, lifting the air, "Together! Together!" It rolled through the crowd, an unstoppable wave. Rosa felt it vibrating through her core. "Miguel," she said again, urgency in her voice. "This is our chance." Finally, he looked at her, a mixture of fear and resolution crossing his face. Slowly, hesitantly, he reached for her hand. The moment their fingers intertwined, an electric surge pulsed between them. It was a connection that spoke louder than words, a promise not just to each other, but to the future. Just as the crowd began to surge forward, roaring with righteous energy, a sudden realization hit Rosa like a thunderbolt: the stakes were higher than she had imagined. She felt excitement and dread swirling within her as she gripped Miguel's hand tighter. They were stepping into the chaos, but what awaited them on the other side? Somewhere in the background, a siren wailed. Rosa could feel the tension thickening. Would their family bonds hold amidst the uprising, or would the weight of their past explode into chaos? The decision loomed ahead like a fork in the road. Together, they could change everything, but at what cost? Rosa squeezed Miguel's hand, her pulse racing like a freight train. The crowd surged forward, a living organism, its heart beating in sync with their fears and hopes. She could see the storm brewing in his eyes, a blend of trepidation and fierce determination. This was it. The moment they had both been dancing around for the longest time was here. "Miguel, don't look back," she urged, pulling him closer. The voices of the crowd coursed through her, a symphony of conviction and resistance. "We're moving forward. Right here, right now." As they moved toward the front lines of the rally, Rosa felt like they were stepping onto a battlefield, only this time, it wasn't with guns and grenades. It was with voices, with souls standing shoulder to shoulder, ready to fight for what they believed in. Around them, people were chanting, raising their fists in solidarity. The air crackled with anticipation. "Look at them, Miguel," she shouted above the roar. "These are the people who fought for their kids, their future. They need us. Together, we can uplift each other." Miguel hesitated just a moment longer, weighing the gravity of the choice before him. The chaos of their past swirled in his mind like a storm, memories of fights, loss, and grief mingling with the hope that flickered in Rosa's eyes. She was right. This was about more than just them. But could he really find a place among so many, after everything? Just breathe, Rosa encouraged, her voice slicing through the uncertainty. You've overcome so much. This is just one more battle. And I'll be with you every step of the way. With a deep breath, Miguel finally nodded, a flicker of resolve igniting in his expression. He stepped forward, heart pounding in his chest, and together they joined the front lines of the crowd, voices mixing into a powerful chorus. As they stood side by side, a wave of emotion hit Rosa. She glanced at her brother, his jaw set, eyebrows drawn together with focus. He was ready to fight. It filled her with warmth and pride, a small light flickering in the dark. Miguel, can you feel it? She shouted, nearly overcome with emotion. We are not alone. We've got our family, our community. The energy surged again, voices building, the air thick with purpose. It was primal, electric. Lines of solidarity stretched between strangers who had come together as one. Rosa felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, filling with unquenchable hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could carve out a new future together, but just as the crowd began to chant louder, a flash of red lights broke through the night, a line of police cars forming at the edge of the park, sirens piercing the battle cry. Rosa's heart dropped. Tension crackled like static in the air. A battle was brewing, and it threatened to burst any moment. The chants faltered as fear swept through the crowd, whispers of doubt taking root. Rivalry and polarization stitched uneasily in the air. Rosa caught Miguel's gaze, searching for reassurance, for strength. Would this moment, their moment, be snatched away just as it began in all the chaos? Miguel, she whispered urgently, her grip tightening on his hand. This is where we take a stand. Together. But the crowd's uncertainty was infectious, and for a moment, Rosa saw Miguel falter, his courage wavering. She felt the weight of their past pressing down, but now was not the time for hesitation. With a deep breath, a resolve blossomed in her heart, igniting memories of shared laughter, struggles, and dreams, everything they fought through together. We have to stand up for all of them. For us. She urged, her voice ringing clear and loud, and just as the first voice broke free from the shadow of fear, launching into a new chant, Rosa felt a new energy rippling through the crowd. Would they answer the call? Would Miguel stand with her, amidst the uncertainty lurking in every corner? She could feel it deep within her, the pulse of change was alive, but would they seize it together or slip apart once again into the darkness? Rosa's heart thundered like a drum as the crowd surged forward, reclaiming its voice. She looked at Miguel, his eyes glimmering with that flicker of determination she loved so much. The sirens faded into the background, drowned out by the powerful chants rising from the sea of humanity around them. Together. Together. They shouted, and the sound vibrated in Rosa's bones. It felt like a call to arms, a promise that echoed through the air. Together. She called, her voice rising above the swell, but Miguel stood still for a moment, fear creeping back into his expression. Rosa could see at the shadows of his past, the weight of loss threatening to pull him under. Listen to them, she pressed, squeezing his hand tighter. They're here for the same reason. We're not alone. People are fighting for their families, for a future. We need to be brave. Her words seemed to wrap around him, pulling back the layers of doubt. Slowly, his shoulders relaxed, and he stepped closer to Rosa, feeling the heat of the crowd's energy wrapping around them like a warm embrace. Suddenly, a figure stepped up to the front of the protest, a local leader with arms raised high. We will not be silenced. She bellowed, encouraging the throng of people. This is our moment. Together, we rise. At her words, the crowd erupted once more, the chants growing louder, filling the night with passion and fire. But Rosa's gaze flicked back to the line of police cars. The officers were climbing out, creating a barricade that split the crowd. Anxiety pricked at her mind. Miguel. She shouted, urgency in her voice. We have to stay united. We can't let them divide us. She knew that this was the moment that would define everything, their fight, their resolve. He looked at her, and in that shared glance, she reassured him. This wasn't just about the protest anymore, it was about who they were, the strength they had built from their shared history. As the police began to advance, Rosa felt a familiar stir of fear. Would authority shatter their united voice? But not this time. She took a step forward, feeling the electric energy of those around her spark her courage. "We stand for justice," she yelled, daring the officers to challenge this fire. "This is our community." Around her, others began to echo her words. "Justice! Justice!" They shouted in unison, a defiant roar against the stillness of oppression. The police tightened their formation, weapons glistening under the streetlights. Rosa glimpsed the worried faces among the crowd, mothers holding children, fathers standing in front of their families, young people filled with hope and fear alike. Could she keep them safe? "Miguel, we can't back down," she insisted, needing him to believe it as much as she did. But a flash of doubt crossed his face. What if they push us back? What if Rosa interjected, what if we win? What if we change everything? She took a deep breath, forcing a calm that she didn't completely feel. This was their fight for a future and, he needed to see that. "Together, we're stronger," she added, raising her voice above the chaos, her eyes fixing on his, willing him to understand. Just then, a loud bang echoed through the night, and a cloud of smoke erupted near the front lines. A flashbang from the police to disperse the crowd. People screamed, chaos ensued. Rosa felt the ground shift beneath her, the crowd rippling with panic. "Miguel!" she cried out, reaching through the haze, her heart pounding in her chest. This was not over. They couldn't fall apart now. As faces blurred in the smoke, she grasped for his hand, fear and determination battling within her. Would they rise above this turmoil? Would they stand firm amidst chaos? But the smoke thickened, making her breath shallow, and in that moment of uncertainty, she lost sight of him. Where was he? Would he find his way back to her? Rosa stumbled forward, her lungs burning in the thickening fog. Panic swirled around her, feeding off the chaos. Voices echoed in her ears, cries of fear and defiance mixing together into a muffled cacophony. She took a shaky breath, forcing herself to focus. "Miguel!" she shouted again, her voice strained. Where was he? She pushed deeper into the crowd, looking for a familiar face, searching for his comforting presence. The crowd was a living thing, pulsing and shifting, and Rosa found herself swept along in its movement. People were trying to make their way out, faces etched with confusion, but others stood their ground, refusing to let fear rule them. Then, through the haze, she spotted a familiar figure, a girl from the community named Clara, her determined expression cutting through the chaos. "Rosa!" Clara yelled, waving her arms frantically. "Over here!" Rosa zigzagged toward her, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Have you seen Miguel?" she gasped, desperation lacing her words. "No. But we can't leave. This is our moment," Clara exclaimed, her eyes fierce with conviction. "We can't let them win." Before Rosa could answer, a loud crack echoed nearby, followed by the sharp hiss of another tear gas canister landing at their feet. The crowd recoiled, and shouts of alarm erupted anew. Rosa felt a moment of sheer terror as people began to scatter again. "Stay together!" Clara yelled, clutching Rosa's arm tightly. She squeezed her eyes shut, feeling the prick of tears as fear mixed with determination. "We need to stand firm. We can't let this be the end," she shouted, rallying her own spirit as well as those around her. The air was thick, the pungent smell of gas biting at her nose. With Clara at her side, Rosa pushed against the tide, returning to the center of the throng. It wasn't just about finding Miguel, this was a fight for everyone's future, a struggle for justice. As they reached a thicker part of the crowd, the local leader from earlier was still shouting, her voice barely breaking through the cloud. "We will not be silenced. This is our fight for justice." Rosa felt a surge of energy at those words, mingling with the crowd's raw emotion. "We're stronger together," she cried, her voice ringing out against the din, defiance replacing despair. The throng answered with a renewed fervor, a wave of hope charging through them. "Together! Together!" they shouted, and in that moment, Rosa spotted Miguel making his way toward her, his face a mask of determination. Relief poured over her as he reached her side, his hand finding hers. "I thought I'd lost you," he exclaimed, breathless and wild-eyed. Rosa squeezed his hand tightly, their fingers intertwining as if they were forming an unbreakable bond. "We're not going anywhere. Not now." With an understanding passed between them, they turned back to face the wall of police. Rosa could see the fear in the eyes of those around her, yet she also saw a flicker of hope. What they were doing mattered. It was real, it was powerful. Suddenly, a calm washed over her. They didn't need to fight with fists, they needed to fight with their voices, unwavering and loud. "Justice! Justice!" she shouted, alongside Miguel, pushing past the fear. The sound of the crowd rose again, harmonizing with their chant, becoming a wave crashing against the barricade of authority. But even as the voices soared, Rosa couldn't shake the sense of danger looming just beyond the chaos. She glanced at Miguel, his eyes filled with fire, yet tinged with concern. "What if they don't back down?" he whispered, fear flooding back into his voice. Rosa understood the unspoken worry in his question. But somehow, she believed this was their moment, a chance to reclaim their lives. "Then we fight," she replied fiercely, their hands still clasped. Together. The moment of truth was upon them. Would they truly unite and push forward, or would fear win out once more? As the chants escalated and the lines solidified, the question became clearer than ever: how far were they willing to go for their freedom? The air crackled with tension, each shout resonating like thunder in the stillness of the night. Rosa felt the sweat on her brow as the crowd surged fiercely, propelled by her echoing cries for justice. There was an energy rising, like a storm gathering strength, and it ignited something deep within her. "Miguel, we can't give in," she urged, her voice fighting to break through the chaos. A quick glimpse at him revealed his expression, part fearless warrior and part scared boy. He squeezed her hand tighter, grounding them both amid the uncertainty. "We have to move," he said, his determination faltering just slightly. Glancing back at the police, their lined-up shields gleaming under the flickering streetlights, he added, "They're gearing up. We need a plan." Rosa nodded, her pulse quickening. Somewhere in the throng, she felt the shifting of spirits, a collective heart beating in unison. She could sense it. This was more than just a protest. This was a moment of history, a rewriting of their narrative. "How about we lead them to the park?" she suggested, knowing that open ground might give them an advantage. "Good idea. It's a wider space. More room to breathe," Miguel replied, and she saw the fire return to his eyes. Clara, overhearing their plot, jumped in, her voice confident. "I'll help you gather people. Let us get them to follow us." With a nod of agreement, Rosa took a deep breath and began to push through the crowd with Miguel and Clara by her side. "Everyone! We're going to the park. Together!" she yelled, her voice filled with urgency. Around them, faces turned, confusion morphing into recognition. The people started to shift, a chain reaction igniting as others began to chant, "To the park! To the park!" They moved as one, a sea of bodies flowing toward a collective goal. The moving crowd felt alive, electric. Rosa could feel the tide of hope rise as the chatter of fear drifted away. It was just them, together, but as they neared the edge of the park, a sudden shout rang out. A line of officers began to advance, their figures ominous against the backdrop of the struggling lanterns. The crowd faltered, a ripple of fear sweeping through them. Some hesitated, caught between fight and flight. "Don't stop. Don't let them intimidate us," Clara shouted, her voice a beacon amid the encroaching shadows. Rosa nodded, echoing her resolve. "We're here for justice. We're here for each other. The voice of the crowd swelled again, fueled by the realization of unity. Justice. Justice. Miguel caught Rosa's eye, and in that moment, within the chaos, something distinctly beautiful emerged. They were all connected, fighting for a cause greater than themselves. This battle was about their future, and it swelled more significant than any single threat. Then the officers advanced, batons raised, but something shifted in the air. Rosa's heart raced, pounding against her chest as fear and adrenaline collided. "Stay together," she shouted, her tone steady. "If we stand united, we can't be broken." As they faced the wall of authority, breathing in the charged atmosphere, uncertainty swirled. But Rosa felt a flicker of possibility growing inside. They could turn back now, but they could also rise. Then, just as the ranks of police began to move, a man from the back of the crowd stood up. "This is not how we solve problems. We're just here to be heard," he yelled, his voice breaking the tension like a glass shattering on the ground. The crowd shifted again, glancing between the officers and the man, a ripple of doubt and courage. Rosa felt the moment teetering. Everything may hinge on this next heartbeat. Would they push forward? Would they break down the barrier, or would fear control the outcome? The stakes had never been so high, and the question hung heavy in the air: what was the price they were willing to pay for their freedom? The man's voice rang out, reverberating through the thrumming heartbeat of the crowd. Rosa felt the weight of his words, a lifeline tossed into the turbulent sea of emotions swirling around them. She could see the tension on faces, doubt mingling with a spark of hope. The flicker of courage she sensed moments ago intensified. "Can you hear him?" Rosa shouted, stepping closer to the crowd, her hands raised as if to catch the building energy. "We're not enemies. This isn't about us versus them. It's about all of us, together." Miguel stood beside her, his eyes searching the throng for something, maybe a sign that they could keep going, or perhaps that this moment could solidify their resolve. Clara was nearby, her fists clenched, radiating determination. Behind them, uncertainty loomed, but it was dwarfed by the sheer force of unity radiating through the masses at that moment. "We're here to be heard," the man repeated, his voice unwavering. "We deserve to be treated with dignity." Another chant began to ripple through the crowd. "Dignity! Dignity!" It swelled, building into a roar of voices that erupted into the night, pushing back against the intimidation of the police. With every shout, Rosa felt the ground beneath them vibrate with their collective strength, a pulse that seemed to transcend fear. "It's working," Miguel whispered, his voice thick with disbelief and excitement. Rosa nodded, spine straightening as adrenaline surged through her veins. They were leaning into something greater than themselves, breaking through the stagnant walls that had been set up to keep them apart. But fear still lived in the air, a dark fog lingering just at the borders of this beautiful moment. The officers tightened their grip on their batons, their shields glimmering like monsters in the night. Rosa glanced back, her heart heavy with uncertainty. "Together," she cried again, finding a new rhythm. "Let us weave ourselves through this. For the people standing next to us. For the stories we have to tell." Around them, she saw people shift, edging closer, and the surge propelled itself forward like a wave crashing against a cliff. The air changed, became electric with a sense of purpose. And then, just as they began to take a step forward as one, a shout erupted from the back, an older woman, her face lined with years of struggle. "Remember why we're here," she exclaimed, and the crowd quieted just enough for her voice to cut through. "This fight is for our children. For a better tomorrow." Rosa's heart swelled, and a fierce breath escaped her lips. This was the heart behind their fight, it was the resilience lodged deep in every beat of their collective hearts. They were not just fighting against something, they were fighting for everything they held dear: their families, their dreams, their freedom. Miguel turned to Rosa, eyes bright with unshed tears, and she felt it too. This was a moment sewn together with hope, with pain, with every unsung story that made them who they were. They could either retreat, or they could surge ahead and make a stand. Are you with us? Rosa roared, filling the night air with her defiance. Are we ready to demand change together? Yes. The crowd shouted back, and Rosa could feel the warmth of their unity wash over her like sunlight breaking through a storm, but just as they steeled themselves to march forward, a piercing sound cut through the night, an order slicing through the air like a knife. The officers held their ground, an unyielding wall of authority. Rosa! Miguel shouted, grabbing her hand, but the fear in his eyes was swallowed by the determination now shared by all. With the weight of uncountable eyes upon them, every heart racing, they took their first step as one. In that moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Would they reach the park? Would this newfound unity breach the divide? And as they moved, a question lingered: would they emerge unscathed, or would this become a pivotal moment etched in time, forever changing the course of their stories? Rosa clutched Miguel's hand tighter as they began to advance. The rhythm of their voices melded into a singular pulse, pushing against the weight of authority standing before them. Shadows danced off the officers' uniforms, their expressions unreadable. Rosa felt the collective breath of the crowd swell, a shared inhale filled with both fear and fierce determination. Keep going, don't look back, she whispered, as if in fear that even mentioning doubt would summon it, the chant of dignity. Dignity became a tidal wave, crashing against the barriers, shaking the very foundation of distrust. Each voice blended into one, their hearts drumming out a beat of resilience, each footfall resonating like thunder. Clara's face lit up with a fierceness that made Rosa proud. This was their moment. This was for all of them. Suddenly, the commanding voice of an officer cut through the air again. Step back or face consequences. The threat fueled a surge of adrenaline, sparking the fire of defiance in Rosa's chest. She could feel Miguel's heartbeat, rapid and alive in their shared grasp. Not today. She shouted. They can't silence us. She lifted her free arm, urging others to follow suit. The whole crowd seemed to lean in, unified, fortified by their fear. They were willing to face the unknown head-on, they were ready to confront whatever intimidation lay ahead. The ground seemed to crackle beneath them. As they moved closer to the police, Rosa felt a flicker of fear, but it quickly mutated into something powerful, a profound sense of belonging. It was as if the souls of her ancestors whispered encouragement in her ear, reminding her of every fight they had endured. Then, in a moment of surreal clarity, Rosa locked eyes with the officer standing at the front. She noticed something flicker in his gaze, a moment of doubt, perhaps. A spark of recognition. Was he remembering the stories of his own family? Don't you want a better life, too? She called out, her voice cutting through the escalating tension. We're not your enemies. We want to build a future. The chant faltered. For just an instant, the officer hesitated, his grip loosening on his baton. A wave of hope surged through the crowd, each person feeling the raw potential of what might unfold if they pushed a little harder, if they held their ground just a little longer. That's when it happened. A single stone flew through the air, launched from the back of the crowd. Time slowed as Rosa's breath caught in her throat. Her pulse raced as shock spread across the faces around her. She turned to see the source, a young man, eyes wild, perhaps desperate. Stay calm. Miguel shouted as tension spread like wildfire. The fear that had been hovering transformed into panic, and for an instant, chaos erupted. Rosa closed her eyes tightly, her heart racing as the chaos unfolded around her. She felt a surge of energy that whispered, "Stay together, hold the line." But as the officers moved in, batons raised, a thought pierced through her fear. What if this moment could change everything? What if their combined strength could shift the narrative? With her gaze fixed forward, Rosa felt the unity of the crowd, the heartbeat propelling her forward. Together. She cried again, her voice rising above the noise. We cannot let them divide us. The crowd echoed her sentiment, voices rising in a chorus of determination that drowned out the fear. But just as the tide turned in their favor, uncertainty loomed heavy on the horizon. Would they stand firm, or would this chaos fracture them? As the officers advanced, the next move could change everything. Would they fight or retreat? Rosa took a deep breath, bracing herself for whatever came next. And all around her, the question hung in the air: would their hope, their courage, indeed pierce through the darkness? The air crackled with tension. Rosa could feel the collective heartbeat of the crowd, a synchronization of aspirations and fears thrumming in her veins. The officers were advancing slowly, batons glinting malevolently in the harsh light as they pushed against the tide of voices swelling in defiance. "Stay strong!" a man shouted from nearby, his voice hoarse yet resilient. "Stay together! Together! Together!" The chant rippled through the crowd again, fierce and unyielding. Faces were aglow with determination, rallying behind the notion that strength lay in unity. Among them, Clara's eyes sparkled with fire, and Miguel's grip never faltered. Rosa's thoughts darted, wishing she could somehow send a message to the officer at the front. She saw that moment of doubt flicker within him, and it surged through her, a spark of hope igniting her resolve. "This is our chance," she thought. Just one more push, but then, a wave of panic crashed as the youth who had thrown the stone shouted something incomprehensible. His frustration echoed against the cries for dignity, igniting a rift that threatened to split the crowd. People bristled. The tenuous equilibrium felt like it could snap at any moment. "Breathe!" Rosa cried, her voice breaking through the noise, desperately trying to reel them back to focus. "This is not what we came for. We fight with our voices, not our fists." The chaos was palpable. Some folks, urged by adrenaline, began to recoil. Rosa felt the tension shift, a pull away from their collective resolve. But she couldn't just stand by as their moment teetered on the brink of violence. With resolve, she stepped forward, her heart pounding, piercing the barrier of dread. "We're not here to hate. We're here to be heard." She gestured, her hands shaking yet resolute. "Each of us has a story. Each life here matters. We want to create, not destroy." The officer hesitated again, confusion flickering across his face. The tension in the crowd shifted slightly, as if they too were drawn to her fire. Eyes began to widen, hearts began to simmer with renewed hope. Could they really shift the tide? Rosa took a deep breath, channeling all her courage into that single moment. "Look around you. We're not monsters. This is our home. Together, we can show that compassion is stronger than fear." For a fleeting moment, the noise settled. The officer, caught off guard, lowered his baton slightly, uncertainty etching deep lines on his brow. It was as if an invisible thread began to weave a fragile bridge between the two sides. But just as the shift seemed tangible, the shadows of intimidation crept back in. An officer barked orders, rallying his squad. "Prepare to disperse." A fresh wave of terror surged through the crowd, shadows of doubt rushing in like a thunderstorm. Rosa felt Miguel's breath catch beside her, his unease pulsing through their clasped hands. Then, steadily, she tried to raise them again. "We can do this," she implored, loud enough for the wavering ones at the back to hear. "If we stand together, they can't touch us." It was a bold claim, one that hung in the air like uncharted territory. But would it hold? Could they really face the darkness together, or had the stone already cracked the foundation of their unity? As fierce tensions swirled around her, Rosa felt it all: the fear, the fight, the flickering hope. Would they dare move forward and embrace the uncertain future? As the officers readied themselves, her heart echoed a simple yet profound question: will our strength be enough? Rosa stood at the forefront of the crowd, muscles taut in anticipation, the distant roar of the world around her intensifying with every heartbeat. The weight of the moment pressed down like a heavy fog, and yet, beneath it all, a surge of courage rose, electric and undeniable. "Together!" she shouted, arms outstretched to inspire those wavering at the back. "We can't back down now. This is for all of us." Miguel tightened his grip on her hand, searching her face. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice quivering with uncertainty. But Rosa didn't have time for doubts. Instead, she felt clarity wash over her, a deep realization that they, all of them, were woven together in this incredible tapestry of voices clamoring for change. More than ever. She replied fiercely, a fire burning bright in her chest. The air felt thick, simmering with tension as the line of police loomed in front of them. Rosa saw the doubt in some eyes, but she also saw hope radiating like sunlight breaking through the clouds. They were scared, yes, but they were also filled with purpose. We are not here to cause harm. We are here for justice. For the future of our families. From the back, a woman yelled, "For our children." Others echoed her words, and suddenly, the chant morphed, "For our children. For our tomorrow." Each voice climbed higher, weaving a soundscape of urgency and hope, lifting Rosa's heart beyond doubt. Then, just as the police began to advance, everything crystallized. "This is the moment," Rosa cried, her voice piercing through the energy pulsing around her. "No more fear. Let our voices drown out the threats." And they began to march. The crowd pushed forward, a living wave of defiance. Their heartbeat pulsed in unison, rising higher and higher until it felt like they could shake the very earth beneath their feet. Rosa caught sight of the officer she had locked eyes with earlier. Fear flickered in his expression, but now there seemed to be a hint of understanding. Was he seeing them as human beings instead of a mob? "Stand tall." Miguel's voice rang out, strong beside her, and she felt the solidarity thrumming through their linked hands. Then came a loud bang in order, a warning. The police charged with batons glistening like merciless spears. A gasp erupted from the crowd. Rosa's heart raced, but she stood firm. "Ready yourselves," she yelled, channeling her energy into the determination around her. "We're not here to be silenced." She felt the warmth of Clara and Miguel beside her. They formed a barrier of love amid chaos. "We will not be silenced." She surged forward instinctively, and much to her amazement, the crowd pressed behind her. They'd become an unyielding force. "Dignity! Dignity!" They shouted again, voices rising, finding strength in collective resolve. The police hesitated, perhaps sensing that the tide had turned. And it was in this moment that Rosa felt something snap within her, a tether to fear that had held her back for years. She remembered the days of scraping to get by, the shadows of struggles no longer looming but instead fading in the warmth of purpose. "Together. For our future," she urged, and with that, the crowd erupted once more, a roar that filled the night like thunder. In that exhilarating moment, something unexpected happened. The officer who had held steadfast amid the tumult shifted. Rosa caught his eye again. "You're part of this story too. It's time for change," she called, voice bold, and to her surprise, she saw a flicker of understanding in his gaze. With a deep breath, he lifted his baton, but not to threaten. This time, it lingered in the air as a gesture not of defiance but of shared humanity. Time stood still for a heartbeat, a breath of possibility, a moment where change felt tangible. The crowd surged forward, embracing the hesitative step taken by this man. And just as they began to close the distance, the unthinkable happened. The officer lowered his baton, gasps rippled through the sea of bodies. "Join us!" a voice shouted. "Join us in our fight!" And in a heartbeat, voices coalesced, joining together in a powerful chorus that resonated against the night sky. "Together! Together!" Rosa squeezed Miguel's hand tighter, her heart swelling as she felt their unbreakable connection. It was a promise. This was not merely a moment, it was the birth of a movement, forged in adversity but blossoming into hope, fueled by the belief that they could craft a different future. The officer stepped aside, opening a path, and knowing this was only the beginning, Rosa grinned brightly at her brother, her tears shimmering with joy. In that moment, surrounded by voices and hope, Rosa realized they had illuminated their path forward. The stories of their struggle wouldn't vanish, they would resonate through time, sparking change. They weren't just a collective of individuals, they were a family, a community rising out of darkness into an unstoppable light that no longer weighed down by the past. They stood ready to embrace whatever came next. And as the crowd surged, singing songs of resilience, she felt that old ambition pulsing once more, but now alongside the unshakable knowledge that together, they were rewriting their destiny. For the first time in years, she could see the stars shining clearly ahead, twinkling with possibilities. The future beckoned, and Rosa was ready to seize it, hand in hand with her brother. This was the moment, where they transformed not just the night but the very fabric of their lives, embodying the truth that united people can move mountains, creating a symphony of change that would echo for generations to come. And as they marched together, Rosa knew that hope was no longer a flickering star in the distance, but a blazing fire they would carry with them into tomorrow. Now, you have to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support really counts. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this inspiring ending. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. This is the moment to show your support and join a community that believes in change. Don't wait not even one more second to share.